And here we are, episode number 2 of the Carbs Won't Make You Fat podcast, here with Josh. And we're going to do a little bit of a talk about how Josh manages his nutrition at work, maybe what we can learn a little bit around that. I'm going to talk a little bit about eating around the festive season. But before we get into any of that, how's your day been, Josh?
Pretty busy. Bunch of classes this morning, some nutrition work, going through some notes, through some food diaries from some people doing the trials, and some other clients that have been a bit more established at work. And then did my own session at Athlete Movement, which was good fun, mostly pool session today.
Nice.
And now I'm here.
Cool. Right. Tell us a little bit about the food diaries then. So people might not necessarily be that familiar with how and why we might use those, and they might be a little bit surprised about the why behind how we use them, because it's not normally as intrusive as people might imagine.
So it just helps us build a better picture of where the client is at currently with their nutrition. And I did that in my private practice work, and then also applying that with the place that I'm working at the moment, which is a members gym. And usually when they sign up, they'll do like a 21-day trial where they're given a folder of different things, of suggestions of some food choices to make, and also just a 3-day food diary, because it's usually short enough for people to commit to rather than keeping a week's worth of what they eat. And then that gets given to me. I make some notes and some observations as to what they do eat. And it varies from person to person. Obviously, some people completely forget to eat. Some know a little bit about nutrition or some gimmicks and may want to try intermittent fasting, for example. There was one who was more of animal-based or carnivore, but then kind of introduced carbs on the weekend and things like that, just to keep it somewhat sustainable. But yeah, take that, make some notes, mainly try to make additions to what they already have, rather than immediately taking stuff away that I would consider not ideal. Because immediately, if their reaction would be, if I start taking things they like away from what they currently eat, or what they find convenient, then they'll be less likely to adhere to what I recommend for them. And the guys that I've worked with privately, one chap, he had absolutely no idea what to do regarding nutrition. He was just eating. He had a very busy job, market trader, early mornings to the afternoon, and have rush hour points and things like that when it would get really busy, and he wouldn't really know when he was going to eat. So it was just like grab something and go. And then he's my height, which is about 6'2", 6'3", and has weighed maybe 60 kilos for a very long time and never really known what path to go down, and tried different things, didn't really work. And so what we did was I got him to complete food diary. I got him in for a cooking lesson with me because he'd never really cooked for himself.
Oh, nice.
Either. And that's kind of one of the other things I like to add with the service I provide.
Very cool.
If someone is not that confident in the kitchen, showing them some simple recipes, because it doesn't really take a whole lot to inspire someone to cooking for themselves and realize it is that simple. And so did like a 2-hour cooking lesson with him where I got him preparing most of what we would then eat, and then we ate it afterwards, and he realized how tasty that was, and then that inspired him to continue it. So even with his early start hours and long days, he's still managing to hit the targets I gave him. And since then, it's been quite a while we've been working together, but he's put on about 10 to 12 kilos.
Fantastic.
Which he's over the moon about, and carries himself differently. He's more confident.
I bet.
Happier in himself, and shows that he can actually do it. And having someone to keep them accountable, but also be a friend as well. So
Yeah, awesome. I love the idea of that cooking class. That's go sign Josh up, guys. He'll give you his
yeah.
Instagram tag later on. But it's
Mm.
certainly not a service I offer. I don't rate myself as a cook like that. But so I use something very similar. What I tend to do with my clients is I'll get them to take the photo, like a photo food diary, and just keep it somewhere on their phone. I then actually, without them realizing this straight away, I send them a guide to assessing it themselves. So then, like a little bit of psychology, very similar to your tactic of adding stuff rather than take it away.
Yeah.
Be like, right, this is like absolutely ideal structure.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you between here and there? Give me like 3 really simple things that you're going to change.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're like,
Okay,
oh,
that's
right.
good though, because it gives them autonomy and puts it on them as well.
100%. Yeah. And so like if you don't have a coach or can afford a coach, that is one way of doing it. Because like for a start, just taking the photos is going to give you a bunch of insight into what you're doing. Because I literally couldn't tell you what I ate yesterday. And not many people can. It automatically modifies behavior because you have this break point of where you think about it before you eat it, which is like massive because food is everywhere and we're evolved to eat everything.
Yeah.
So stopping and thinking in an environment where food is everywhere is key. And then, like you say, that little client autonomy piece. And like if anyone's listening, contact us at the podcast. We can help you out with that sort of stuff, or go check out my website. There's a bunch of articles on there that show you pretty much how to do that. So like with that in mind, we talked before about I'll bring in the your cooler bag example now, because we talked about this last pod, and like it's like so obvious to me that like if you want to be on track with your nutrition, being prepared is the thing, that it's the hack that everyone is missing in their nutrition. And you're in this scenario where there's no fridge at work, so you can't keep any food there. So why wouldn't you bring it with you in a cooler bag rather than buying it in Sainsbury's every day?
Yeah.
But like that seemed to go down very differently with the people that you were talking to around.
A little bit. It was less so with the other staff members,
Of course,
but a bit more with the members. And it was after I spoke, because it was something I noticed that I thought was a little bit peculiar, and then I spoke to my parents about it, and they were working on Guildford Market on North Street one day. And one of their regular customers, she her job is primarily working with obese people, and they do the Cambridge diet, and obviously there's I think it's a low carb thing, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I don't know a bunch about it, but I think so.
Yeah, and they mentioned what I do for work now, and that I bring my lunch or pretty much all my food with me. And the observation I got from one of the members saying was like, it was basically a roundabout way of her saying they look at what I'm eating as like, oh, he's on a diet because he's prepared it, therefore he's maybe eating this way to go towards a particular goal or something like that, whether that be having a beach body or doing something on a stage, whether that be an athletic endeavor or bodybuilding or anything like that. And for me personally, I've never really been interested in sport. I've just kind of got into it through the back door by doing different training styles and things like that, and just like lifting weights and being relatively fit and strong. And as that relates to food, it's just more the way I eat. Diet words these days seem to have very loaded meanings, and people don't like to label stuff, but they also like to label stuff. And rather than saying I'm on a diet, no, this is just the way I eat, and it's predominantly whole food based, omnivorous, balanced, and all that sort of stuff. And I enjoy making it. Sometimes there are moments where I think I really can't be asked, but at the same time, I would prefer to make it so that I've got something prepared and I don't have to think what outlet can I buy from in Guildford that I'm not particularly keen on.
But also cost perspective as
And
well.
cost perspective as well, yeah. Like lots of the stuff I do make in bulk, or the initial view from some people might think that's a lot of money or that's a lot of food, but once you portion it out into all the
Yeah.
meals, it all makes sense rather than splurging about. I don't know, what does a burrito at Chipotle cost? Maybe 12 quid or something like that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So
It looks banging, but yeah, 12 quid every day is going to put a
yeah,
big
and like
dent in your wages.
yeah, exactly. And so, like with the job I started in September, my schedule's changed and I've got quite a lot of early morning starts.
Mm,
And so I like to get up even earlier before I have to get to work to get a first meal in, because
yeah,
otherwise I'll be
same.
um, a horrible bastard to be around. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'll have second breakfast maybe around 9 or 10 o'clock. But usually the first breakfast is a cooked meal of like omelette with ham, spring onions, and cheese. And I make
Nice.
my own bread as well. So I've got sourdough bread and some cooked vegetables like asparagus, tomatoes, and some mushrooms and that. And then second breakfast is usually overnight oats, which is a recipe I've nicked from a Bristol Bears rugby player called Max Laheath.
Yeah, a lot of the rugby boys use this one. It's very
Yeah,
common. Yeah,
and
I think I know what you're going to
he's a
say.
very charismatic, eccentric man who's very much into his food and films, which is why I follow him. And yeah, well, I'll probably write out the recipe so you can put it in the show notes for this one
Nice.
if anyone listening would like to try it because it's very tasty. And then lunch is usually salmon, steak, or chicken, either breast or thighs with some potatoes, and I'll make up another jar of a salad, a feta salad with chickpeas thrown in there, maybe some pasta for extra carbs, depending on what I'm doing later on in the day. And that usually sees me well.
Nice. And like, just like to fill in a few gaps, bit of context there. Like,
Mm.
if you are, a lot of people listening to this won't be personal trainers, but like that concept of a second breakfast, you're on your feet all day. You need to eat a reasonable amount of fuel. You're starting really early.
Mm.
That's probably not something that would be that familiar if you worked in an office, but
Mm.
it's just we have a slightly different lifestyle. You don't really get that many opportunities to eat, especially if you've got back-to-back classes, back-to-back clients. So again, like being prepared
Mm.
saves you from a lot of that.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and thinking, wow, that's a lot of stuff to do, like Josh, you absolutely love cooking. It's in the family. It's something you've got a good skill at. It's so great that you can pass on that knowledge. But if you can't cook, you still get to be prepared. You still get to like buy some pre-cooked chicken thighs, buy like a packet of microwave rice that you can actually eat raw because it's already cooked,
Yep.
and like some lettuce that's pre-chopped up. Like, meet yourself where you're at. But there's always a compromise to everything, and the compromise to eating really well, especially on a budget, is you got to put some work in to do that, and to prepare that up front, or at least have a plan in your head to go execute it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and also on that concept, when we talked about this, we were in the gym talking about this topic, and there's also like that whole point about breakfast being quite filling is an important one. So loads of people, really busy lifestyles, almost like shortcut breakfast a little bit, maybe a slice of toast, maybe nothing at all. I was talking to a lady at Athlete Movement where I help them with their nutrition. I was hosting a workshop, and she's like, I don't understand. Like, I'm so ravenously hungry every single evening, but I'm eating really, really well. And what it came down to, after asking a few questions, I was actually like, well, let's define what eating really well looks like. Tell me what your meals were today. So she's like, well, lunch was this. And it was like, yeah, a salad with a bit of chicken in it. So you got some protein, some veg. Like, salad is fairly filling. So it's high in fiber, nourishing, maybe a little bit of sweet potato or something. So I was like, okay, that's an all right lunch. Maybe like don't know what the portion size is. What was breakfast? Oh, I make this greens juice.
Yeah.
Now, if you go into Sainsbury's and pick up like the innocent smoothie green juice, it's like 80 calories for a glass, which is nothing.
No.
Like a meal should be at least 400 calories for pretty much everybody that I could think of, if not more. That's only 1,200 calories in a day if you have 3 meals, right? So if we're only eating like 80 calories for breakfast, because we're busy and in a rush and it's easy and that's all, understandable, what happens when we get into the evening is the knock-on effect is hunger isn't necessarily just the one meal that you have. It's the combination of them all across the day. So you get yourself through to lunch just about, you have quite a light lunch, you're still running around, you get home, you relax from all the stress of the day, and then that relaxing from stress is like a signal, like cortisol drops, and you're like, oh, I really need some comfort from that. Food is comforting. And you've also starved yourself all day. So no wonder you can't stop go picking at the dinner. And like when I framed it that way to the lady, it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, this isn't an issue of willpower in the evening for you. And it rarely is an issue of willpower, to be honest. It's an issue of how we're structuring our nourishment throughout the day.
Yeah.
I think one of the other nice things I picked up on in what you're talking about as well was, what did I pick up? I lost my train of thought. Along that nourishment element and no, it's gone. We'll come back to that one. It will come back to me. Oh, that was it. Yeah. Think about abundance and not scarcity. So lots of people think, and I've found my train of thought now, so I'll try and keep it. Lots of people think like going on a diet is about how little you can eat. The polar opposite. Like it's about controlling calories, but eating as many calories as you can whilst, and let's say the goal of the diet is fat loss, because it isn't always, but if the goal is fat loss, eating as many calories as you can whilst losing fat at a reasonable rate, because then when that fat loss inevitably slows down because you've got smaller there and you need to eat a little bit less because you're smaller and the amount of calories you need to eat is directly related to your size and activity. Then you've got some room to go. If you start off at like 1,000 calories a day, you'll get on great for maybe 3 days and then you'll crash. And that's where people, like in inverted commas, fall off the wagon, but they've just gone too hard at it and they've been too impatient. The other side of that is that abundance mindset of being like, how can I get the most nourishment on this plate? How can I really fuel myself? And thinking about it as, it sounds cliched, as a lifestyle change, but ultimately it is the way that you lose body fat, if that's your goal, should be the way that you maintain it. And if your route to losing body fat is so difficult to do that you really struggle and white knuckle your way through it, then how the hell are you going to keep it off? So where we need to then go for it is enjoy what you're doing, learn to cook, learn flavors, bring in a bunch of nourishing foods. But for God's sake, please eat some of the stuff that you enjoy as well and work out how you fit that into your diet. Because otherwise you finish the thing, you go back to what you were doing and you put all the weight back on. And that's normally what happens with like yo-yo dieting, because the approach has been unsustainable. So, and that's kind of where I personally like to get people thinking about calories, because then that means like 20% of your calories can literally be from whatever you want. So if you want to eat 20% of your calories from a Mars bar, that's fine. Or many Mars bars, depending on your calorie goal. Like it's not going to be bad for your health, despite what social media might say. But do that if a Mars bar is your favorite food. If it's just a meh food, then pick the thing that you love and get that in your diet.
I agree with that. There's, I don't know if you follow him, but there's a guy called Marcus Philly who's he was a multiple CrossFit Games athlete, and he's since retired from that, and now he's got a company called Functional Bodybuilding.
Right.
but he also puts a lot of stuff out on YouTube. And one of his things that he's kind of challenging people to do is get 50 grams of protein in before 10 a.m. for breakfast, basically.
Nice.
And he obviously he's in the fitness space. He's working. He's got a gym. He works as a coach, trainer, and things like that. So probably has a similar daily routine to you and I, but obviously other people have different jobs and stuff like that. But he puts out really clear, concise information with he kind of has the same approach to food as I do. If you just take the base ingredient and then add a couple of things to it, whether that's a particular spice or seasoning, whatever it may be, or even the sweeter side of things, like he does protein pancakes, which predominantly are oats, cottage cheese, banana and eggs, and you blend all that up, and you've got a high protein, moderate carb pancake, which you can have for breakfast with some berries and some honey on it, or you can have it as a snack or throughout the day. But either way, getting that 50 grams of protein in at before 10 a.m. or your first breakfast, I find it to be one of the most satiating things. And people that have that afternoon itch of a craving coming in or not being filled up till lunch, it's a really good way of reducing that from happening, basically, because you'll have a lot of sustained energy throughout the day, the morning and the day, and you won't have those pangs like you usually do.
100%. Yeah.
And what would 50 grams of protein look like on a plate? That could be like 3 to 4 egg scramble with a couple of turkey sausages on the side or something like that. Or you could have eggs on toast with some smoked salmon and then a bowl of Greek yogurt with some protein powder mixed up into it as well, with some berries on top for a bit of a savory and a sweet brekkie or something like that. It doesn't have to be complicated at all.
No, I mean, I go even simpler with that. Like I would go, personally, my breakfast tends to be oats, Greek yogurt, nuts. So oats are relatively rich in protein as well. They all count. It doesn't have to be a direct protein source. Like you could even go as simple as what I say to some of my clients when, like, or people I talk to about nutrition when they're just getting started out, like, what is breakfast? Well, it's a croissant. Okay, get that croissant, have that croissant at the train station, buy yourself a tub of protein powder, 2 scoops of protein powder in a shaker, have that with your croissant, meet yourself where you're at. Croissant isn't ideal, but it's convenient for you. So is grabbing a shake. Put those two together, you get the satiating or the hunger blunting benefit of the protein, and you get 50 grams of protein in before like midday. And the reason I think behind that whole challenge, which I think is a great challenge, is when I see those food diaries and I see people assessing them for themselves, like I would say 80 to 90% of the time, one of the 3 things is more protein at breakfast. Yeah. Because we just eat like shreddies, toast, a croissant, a black coffee. And as you say, like, no wonder we get the munchies at 10, 11 o'clock. Yeah. Not fueling ourselves.
Yeah. So like you made what the other point the podcast could be about, and like eating out and what choices to make doing that. So like we discussed last week with Nick as well, the precision nutrition thing is it's a good course and it's a good foothold on the like learning more about nutrition, but they, particularly when it comes to measuring your foods and what to look for and how to build your plate, it's very simplistic, which is also something I like, and being able to measure the quantities of food with your hand. Like a palm size worth of protein, fistful of greens, a cupped hand of carbohydrates, and like a thumb worth of fat. A lot, and obviously that will vary from person to person because they have different size hands. But as being able to do that without having to say take a scale every week out is a really useful thing. But even building a plate of food, if you're looking at a menu in a restaurant, wherever you go, like, has that got a protein in it? Has that got a carb and vegetables?
Yep.
Yes, okay, I'll have that. And it's a very easy way to make best choices. Sure, if you got like if you go to a pizza place, pizzas are delicious, but they're obviously not that high
Yeah.
in protein. But if you can have one with like the addition of extra chicken on top or something like
Yeah.
that, and
Side
maybe
salad.
and side salad or some rocket sprinkled on top, then that's a good choice.
Yeah, like best endeavors. So
Yeah.
I was doing like a whole thing starting from like the ground up of it's that time of year. Where are we? Like the 8th of December today as we're
Mm.
recording this. So 8th of December, people have got like Christmas parties. I'm out for our gym's Christmas social tonight. That is mostly alcohol based, so that is not a good example of what we're going to eat nutritionally, but it is life. Events and parties, like people can think about nutrition as either being on or off or
Mm.
good or bad. And the biggest part is to get past that like on off mentality of pass fail.
Mm.
Because as we said in the last podcast, nutrition's got a lot of gray areas and a lot of wiggle and actually because it's quite dynamic, that gives you a lot of room for error. So it's actually a positive thing.
Mm.
Where I would start with an event is think about what I sort of dub that I've picked up from probably the high performance podcasts I listen to, but
Mm.
think about your standards, think about like your non-negotiable behaviors around your health, right? People don't often have a great standard when it comes to their own health, especially like if they're interested in improving their nutrition. Maybe that's because their standards aren't as high around their own health as it could be. And what I mean by that is if you're going out for the work Christmas party and like you're going out because you know a few of your colleagues, but you're going to be sat on the table with a bunch of people that you don't like wouldn't necessarily hang out with outside of work. Like, do you have to be all in on that event in terms of the alcohol, having extra portions of stuff? How much is that food and drink contributing to your enjoyment of the evening and at the fundamental level?
Mm.
Versus, let's say it's your best friend's wedding and you do like to drink with your friends, you do like to eat with your friends, like that is probably contributing massively to the enjoyment of that moment. And that's probably the wedding is probably more the example to go all in at and be like, yeah, I'm happy to lower my standards here because
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be the best time ever. Go have at it, deal with the hangover the following day, get back on track as soon as you can. Versus, oh, I'm stuck at this work event. It's so dull. Oh, I'll have another bottle of wine with that person I don't really enjoy talking to tolerate them. I will, well, everyone else is having dessert and they've made me feel guilty for not having dessert. When that dessert isn't adding anything to the moment. So that's the first place to start is, do I want to be all into this event? And is going more indulgent with my food choices going to add value? If it is, lean into that, go and own it and go and have fun. If it's not, then maybe being on track is practical for you because the food isn't adding any value. So it's going to be easier to be on track with your nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Then one of the key mistakes, which I was just reading on our nutrition lecturer, Tom Bainbridge, has got a really good Instagram channel. He talked about it today. And he was like, one of his clients had asked him, how should I eat before I go out for a meal in the evening? He was like, you eat normally. You don't save any calories. You don't go into that situation hungry. Like, yeah, you'll eat more when you go out. That's fine. Don't go into that situation hungry because you're going to get there and be ravenous otherwise. And it's going to push you even further off track.
Mm-hmm.
He then goes on to say, like, yeah, if you eat out like 2-3 times a week, then maybe and fat loss is your goal, then there's going to need to be some structure and moderation around that. But again, the odd event once a week is just going to slow things down very momentarily. It's not an on-off switch, like I already explained.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you've arrived in that situation with a normal appetite and you don't open up the menu and immediately need to eat everything because it looks really, really tasty because you're so hungry, moderation becomes easier.
Yeah.
And also it builds a better mindset around your food of you do not have to then think about compensating for behaviors. You can go out to your best friend's wedding and crack on because that's worth it and it's social. And then like to talk a little bit more practically around it. Number one tip, slow down and savor what you're having. If you've ever been out with like a bunch of friends and you've had like some sort of like tapas or something, and it's like just drinks, and it's like almost like a serve yourself.
Yeah.
I'm always struck by when like you're having a great time chatting away, how slowly that like plate of food like disappears versus if you're sat at home, it's like eaten much quicker because you're talking, the whole pace is slowed down. So try and A, enjoy the company, but B, it's normally the first couple of bites of something that are the best, the most exciting. It's normally the first sip of a nice cold beer. I would say, like, after I played cricket in the summer, the first sip of a nice cold beer is incredible after a whole day playing cricket.
Yeah.
Second beer, not so much. The third beer, meh. Right? And it's like the law of diminishing returns. So again, slowing down enables you to be like, yeah, that was nice. I don't need any more of that. Which when you don't slow down, you think is a bonkers behavior that you'll never be able to get to. But actually, it comes from not being starving hungry when you go out for dinner and then slowing down when you get there.
Yes.
Easier said than done, but
it does take practice.
Yeah, it does. But again, like tips that have a conversation, like put your cutlery down between bites, you know, think about things before you go out. Then have a plan.
That is another thing that people can apply when they're at home as well, because like
100%.
mindful of when you're eating, because quite often you're either in front of a screen when you are eating, and so it's just shoveling food into your face, but actually being mindful of what you're doing and taking the time to set down the cutlery and just chew properly, and one that will help with the digestion anyway, because that's the first stage of digestion in your mouth. And then it will just be a better experience overall, and then it will just gradually become muscle memory.
And actually also, like, interestingly, doesn't necessarily work with every single thing, but if you slow down and really chew your food, say like 20 times, you start to notice the foods that are easier to overeat. So if you go pick up a slice of pizza for dinner tonight, no way you bite that down in 20 bites. It's like 5 max.
Yes.
Like piece of broccoli, many more than 20. Like a potato, like, well, maybe not potato, but like you get the concept. Like you start to be like, oh, that food's really easy to overeat. Maybe that's one I need to be aware of being mindful around.
Yeah.
Like nobody needs to be mindful around eating broccoli.
No.
That tends to look after itself.
It does.
Unless it's like deep fried or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like another tip in that terms of like when we're eating out, have a strategy. I quite like, I was looking at Emma Story Gordon's Instagram today, and she was saying, pick 2 things from 4. And the 4 things are a starter, a main, alcohol, or dessert. So you're moderating, but you're not saying you can't have any one of those things.
Right, okay.
But if you're going to have a starter, a main, a bottle of wine, and a dessert, you're going to have a lot of calories.
Yeah.
Like if you have a starter and a main, not so many. If you have a main and some booze, not so many. Main and dessert, that's going to help if you want to stay on track.
Yeah.
And finally, like she talks about this in the same post I read, where she talks about make it the best version of that thing. The best concept I could think of this is from another fitness professional who was talking about, he makes American guy, Mike Vacanti, but he talks about with his clients a no Dorito rule.
Right.
And he tells this story about, he's lots of travel for his work with like his celebrity client, but he said he found himself like away in this hotel, like in Italy or somewhere, had a whole bag of Doritos, and he's just like plowing into these Doritos, and he's like, wait, I can eat these at home. I'm in Italy. I could go and get gelato, pizza, like I could go and get the best versions of all of these foods, and I've got this bag of Doritos that I'm just like plowing into. So let's say you go to the restaurant and you're not sure which 2 of the 4 things to pick, but you know that restaurant does like a tiramisu, which is your favorite dessert, and you know it's insane. then you better be picking that tiramisu.
Yeah.
Equally, if you know like it's not run by Italian people or they make a terrible tiramisu, don't pick it. Like
Yeah.
make the thing worth it, and then that's going to make it again. That's going to make it easier to moderate because it's going to be like, yeah, that thing was worth doing. I've owned that. Move on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Very good idea.
Anything else from your side around that sort of eating out?
No, I can't really comment anymore because like I don't eat out that often.
Yeah, similar. Not as
And
much these days.
the times when I do that post you just talked about, as my girlfriend lives up in London, and sometimes we do occasionally go out, and like there's this fantastic Italian restaurant on Gloucester Road called De Mario, and pretty much everything on the menu is delicious, and so you can't really go wrong. And so if you have like a burrata to start off with, and then a pasta dish for your main with a nice sausage ragu sauce, and then a tiramisu afterwards, and like you don't necessarily feel like having any alcohol with it, although it does go along with it. But there's been times where I've had maybe a glass of red wine with it, or just sparkling water for the day, because like I've got these three delicious meals in front of me. I'm just going to focus on that rather than any alcohol. But yeah, it's that's all I can really say on that.
That's a great point. I think as well, like it often gets overlooked. Like it's known that a Mediterranean or a blue zone diet is seen as being healthy, but actually it's a lot of the behaviors of the people that live in the Mediterranean or the blue zones or like Okinawa, those types of places where people sit down with very simple ingredients done very, very well with their family, with no distractions, eat it slowly, they socialize, and it becomes very easy to enjoy in moderation because the food tastes amazing. They're not wolfing it down distractedly. And it's part of like just chilling out with everyone. And probably the chilling out is one of the bigger elements of their longevity as well, and the fact that they're like a little bit active. They don't overeat particular things, but they do eat cheese, like desserts.
Yeah,
alcohol.
it's a different cult. Like if you're using Italy as an example, they hold food in such a high regard. Like one of their things that the prime minister has put a bill in is to ban any lab grown meats being also sold in Italy. Because I remember watching a documentary that Stanley Tucci did when he was traveling around. And he went to Parma, and there was years ago a scandal about like counterfeit Parma ham being made, and you could tell the difference between the quality of the meats, and that was a really big thing. And so anything like that, they protect their food culture because it's so important to them, and it's trying to. Convenience is a good thing and a handy thing, but at the same time, it does distort what people's perception of good or delicious is.
100%. 100%.
You've got words like mouthfeel and all these phrases that the food industry come up with to make their products sell. And I know there are people that get very, very upset about what the food industry has done. And to be fair, I've had my own bugs to bear with that, but I'm not in a position to change anything about it. But then kind of harking back to what we were talking about last week with stoicism is like changing your disposition on things so that it doesn't upset you or control you or anything like that. You can control how you react to things. So like, okay, this is what the system is, but I don't necessarily have to follow that. I can maybe align with a culture that really holds food in high regard and treat it with respect, and then hopefully that will treat my body with respect, I suppose, is a long-winded philosophical way of looking at it.
I like that. Yeah, and yeah, um, success leaves clues is a like a big sporting cliche, but
Hmm.
what do the healthier people do?
Yeah,
What do the healthiest people in the world do? They move
yeah,
every day. They enjoy meals with their family. They do drink a little bit of alcohol, even though we know that there isn't a safe level for health. It's not good for your health. But
no,
that sharing of alcohol in moderation in a family environment or a friendly environment, that allows them to relax.
mm,
Part of the reason for a lot of processed food is because people are busy.
yeah,
And I think one key is like find some time to carve out of your day to do the harder thing, prepare your
hmm,
lunch. And it is hard, but
hmm,
in the moment it's hard. The knock-on impact decades down the line is phenomenal for your health and longevity.
yeah, definitely.
And like, yeah, do the harder thing now because it has the bigger payback, bigger compound interest later down the line.
Hmm. Yeah, and then you learn some shortcuts as well because I'm no chef or anything like that, but I've got some basic knife skills,
Mm-hmm.
which serve me well in preparing food, so it speeds up the whole process. And like the number of appliances that you have these days, I've got an air fryer. I
Yeah.
use it every single day. It's one of the two drawer ones, and like I've done
Nice.
entire roast chicken dinner.
Oh wow.
So I've got the bird in one side, and then I've got the vegetables in the other side, and then I'll
Nice.
steam cook some green beans and broccoli on the stove and make a gravy with the juices from the chicken. And that'll be a meal for three people, or if it's less people, it could be meal over consecutive days
Yeah.
and things like that. So, yeah.
That's yeah, and again, like another really underrated cooking tip. Probably the last one I'll give, but is again, like from a chef perspective, I heard a podcast with this chef, and he was like, basically, anytime my oven's on, it's costing me money. So I've got something in there cooking.
Yeah.
And that concept of like, just because, oh, what should I have for lunch tomorrow at work? Well, in that example, make a little bit extra at dinner
Hmm.
and sorted. You're cooking dinner anyway.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, that's boring. It's the same thing I ate last night, but food can be function too. It's okay to be slightly
Mm.
boring, especially if health is the more important factor for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's the non-sexy thing. Like you have like
Yeah,
I've made extra of my dinner so I can have that for lunch, but that's boring. But it's like it kind of relates well to training as well because
yeah,
you've
yeah,
got people doing incredible things or ridiculous things on the internet or putting a spin on things so they could market something new. But
yep,
really, if it's a squat, it's a pull, it's a hinge, it's a carry, it's a vertical press, it's a horizontal press.
yeah.
Those are the keys to getting fitter and stronger. And it's the same principle that gets applied to nutrition, but they just try and polish a new turd each time.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's like shiny object syndrome of, oh, that looks fancy and new, or try that, or oh, that must be the key that I'm missing, when sleep, good hydration, stress
Mm.
management,
Yeah.
portion control.
Hmm. And energy balance. So yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, portion control, scales with energy balance.
Hmm.
And really, if those things are all in check, you're going to be pretty much all the way there.
Hmm.
So about the example we gave at the start, intermittent fasting, calorie deficit, carnivore, calorie deficit,
Yeah.
any fat loss approach, calorie deficit. That's how it works.
Yeah.
They're all different tools. Like, I'm not bashing any of them. Like, balance is always better. That
Mm.
comes back to being boring. Boring tends to be better.
Hmm.
Look at like any pro sports person, they're good at doing the basics over and over and over again, and they don't get tired of doing that.
No. Right.
So if I were to wrap up, I would say I'll take home that point of do the basic stuff really, really well, be boring. That is where success lies, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
Anything you want to sort of pull out of the episode for people to take home with them?
I'd say just keep it simple. Like
Oh yeah.
it ties in with the basics, but just keeping stuff simple. It doesn't really have to be any more complicated. Because people have got enough shit going on in their lives that if they overcomplicate what they're eating. It would just be completely unfathomable. So just keep it simple, stupid, and that's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll wrap up. Where can people find you on Instagram? Because I absolutely butchered your Instagram handle in the last
But it's
podcast.
more my
I'm
surname because it's Dutch, so it's a bit tricky to pronounce. But it's Josh at Josh Weebout 90, so Wibaut, and that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So go give Josh a follow. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much. This is only our second episode. We're just going onwards and upwards from here. We'll be back again next week. Hit like, hit subscribe, share it with your friends if you're finding it useful. If you want to know more about me, you can find me on Instagram at Food Flexibility, all one word, or check out my website, foodflexibility.co.uk. So we'll wrap it up there. Till next time, go enjoy your Christmas party. Don't overcomplicate it. And remember, carbs won't make you fat. Cheers, Josh.
Cheers, Tim.